Welcome everybody, welcome man. Welcome back to another one. Please hit the like button. Also share, and if you're not subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. It helps in the platform. Back again, family. I just want to apologize to all my loyal supporters and subscribers. I've been really tied up doing something down here where I'm residing at. We had a function for a few days down here, so I was really extremely busy with that. I know y'all been waiting for part 9 on my prison journey. And, a few people reached out to me and said, man, we waiting for part 9. What's happening? And I said, look, I'm gonna get to it. I'm just tied up. I'm real busy right now. I'm always thinking about it, man. I gotta drop this video. But what I was busy doing was extremely important. So I hope that you will kind of forgive me and give me a pass, and let's just move forward. So family, we on part 9. I'm gonna try my best not to take too long because I do gotta, get headed out to work and get that done. But we on part 9. So we left out off on part 8 where, I kind of made my decision on where I want to go with this case. And that decision was, I'm fighting this case. I'm trying to go all the way. I'm trying to go to trial. I'm trying to fight this case because in my mind, I believe that there's insufficient evidence to convict me on these charges that they hit me with. So my lawyer came back to visit me. He had a lot of the discovery. He didn't have every single piece of the discovery, but he had enough where we can go over some things and kind of strategize and stuff like that. So he brought my copies up. We in the room. We going over the paperwork and stuff. And he asked me, he said, look, be honest, you want to I understand you're not trying to cooperate, but do you want to plead guilty and see what we could at least get the judge to give you the minimum, which is 15 years, or do you want to try the case? Ultimately is your decision. So I said, look, let me tell you my decision, and then I want your advice after I give you my decision. I said, my decision is that I want to try the case. So let me hear. I'm not going to get into the particulars of why I want to try the case, but I just want to put that out there. Now I want to hear what you have to say. And he was like, well, just skimming through the paperwork, and I didn't have a lot of time to actually go into details in what I read. This is what he's telling me. But we can try the case. Nothing is guaranteed. I'm not gonna blow smoke up your behind or nothing like that. We can try the case. There's always a chance to beat the case, but there's also a very high chance of losing the case. He said the government, the United States government, they have a conviction rate of, I believe it was a 97 point something % conviction rate. So he said, with that being said, not many people beat their case. You do have a lot of people pleading out, and you do have some people taking their cases to trial and trying the case, but the conviction rates are very high. He said, me skimming through what I've read, my experience, this is what he's telling me. Although they they don't have a strong case, just me breezing over everything. But however, what I'm looking at, in my experience, I've seen cases like this where they have secured a conviction. So, he's telling me this. He's saying, I'm not telling you this to sway your decision in any way. I'm just giving you what you asked me for. He said, well, does that answer your question? I said, absolutely. He said, okay, so what's this? I said, we're going to try the case. We going all the way, folks. They don't got nothing. So now I goes into my spiel. I said, look, man, I don't see nothing here in terms of any recordings, video surveillance, and things of that nature. I don't see any of that here. But however, I'm going to take what you just gave me and I'm going to go review, but I'm still making that decision. I want to try the case. I don't believe I'm going to see anything in here that's going to sway my decision to just not, want to try the case. So he said, well, I understand your point and that point is valid, but however, that's not the way it goes. They can still secure a conviction, despite not having those particular evidence that you're speaking about. So I said, all right, fine, we're gonna talk. We had a good conversation, man. Went back upstairs and started reviewing the paperwork and still nothing. So I gave him a call and I told him, look, I reviewed everything, I'm still going to go through the decision of trying the case. He said, okay, look, I'm going to start filing these motions to suppress some of the evidence and other motions too as well. I'm going to put a bunch of motions together and then we'll review it next week and then I'll file it and then we'll wait for court date. We got to wait for the government to respond and all that. I said, cool, so I'm just kicking back, man. I'm feeling myself. I'm like, man, I got them. I got them. They not getting well. This is my mindset. So I'm in there, man. I'm jailing, man. I'm in a little county jail. A lot of the guys in there, they're not facing no time. You do have some men that's facing serious charges, but for the most part, you got guys in there, driving while suspended, DUIs, possession of a small amount of marijuana, maybe a few bags of crack, something real light. And, 9 times out of 10, they're going to get a kind of a slap on the wrist, maybe probation, and that's it. So here it is, the unit I'm on. I'm like, everybody's looking at me like I'm the mayor because I got a federal case and, it came out in the newspaper, the local newspaper out there. So I'm like, bro, look, y'all tripping. That's not who I am, you know what I mean? I'm no different from y'all. I might have a different case, but man, we here together, you know what I'm saying? So my lawyer ended up coming back to see me, he brought a few motions that he was gonna file. I know it was one motion to suppress the evidence, motion to disclose the identity of the confidential informant. I can't quite remember all the other motions. I try to make it my business to get, because I have my box with all my paperwork in terms of my trial transcripts, all the motions that he filed at a different location. So I'm gonna have that mailed to me, and then I'll kind of show that to y'all. Y'all may not know what you're reading, but it's always good to let your audience see what it is you're talking about, so that maybe to hit home a little bit more. So, he gave me that, and he scheduled, he filed everything, and they scheduled us for a court date. I believe it was, if I'm guessing right, maybe a little over a month later. So I'm back on a unit, and in this jail, they allow you to, like I said, they allow you to purchase a TV on the commissary. It's a little 13-inch TV color, but there's a lot of channels on there. And so, when I'm just relaxing, I'm in the cell just watching TV, man, and, MTV, BT, and all this stuff, and just thinking, man, like, man, I just want to go home, man. Not home to do the right thing. Let's be clear on that. I just want to go home, man, so I can get back to it again. I'm being honest, family. I know it sounds like insanity, but we're going through my journey. And in going through my journey, I have to be authentic. I can't make up things. I can't make believe. I can't try to switch it up, because right now in my life where I'm at, I no longer live that kind of life. I have to be real. I have to give you that journey the right way. Once you want it that way, put it in the comment section. I don't, let's talk about it. So, court date comes up. We in the courtroom, everybody getting their paperwork together. You know how it is on the TV. Government gets, flicking through their papers, making sure they got everything lined up. So when we have this hearing, they not fumbling all over the place. And, the judge, I guess he was a little delayed. He had some things he was trying to finish up on. So he sent the clerk out there to say, look, we're going to take a little 15-minute recess, 15, 20-minute recess, and the judge should be ready by then. So, both my lawyer and the government said, okay, not a problem. So my lawyer said, look, they're going to, take you back to the holding cell. He said, well, look, take this with you, and read this and then let me know if you still want to try the case. He said, let me ask you, do you still want to try the case? Are you sure you still? I said, absolutely. So when he gives me the paperwork, he gives me something to read. And he says, read this when you go in the holding cell and, tell me if you still want to try the case. So they take me to the holding cell and I look at the paperwork. It was a kind of thick, maybe 20 pages, maybe 30. I'm not, can't remember the exact amount, but it's the grand jury transcripts, family. The grand jury transcripts. Now, I'm going to put this out there. For those of you that don't know, it is not common practice for any defendant in the federal system to have their grand jury transcript. They don't allow you to have that. But here it is, my lawyer is giving me that. He's telling me you can keep that. That's your copy. Because I guess he wanted me to read something in here as it relates to my case and to, probably help me better make a decision on whether I want to try the case or just cop out and get the 15 years. We're not doing that. I'm not just going to take 15 years. In my mind, you got to give me everything. So, so I'm reading through the grand jury transcripts and, I'm not going to say I get a bombshell, but I just see some things in there like, man, damn. Ah, man, But guess what? I'm not going to tell you what was in there. We're going to save that for part 10. We're going to save that for part 10. Now, be patient with me, family. I know I kind of dropped the ball on this video right here. I took a little too long to drop it, but forgive your boy, man. I'm doing the best I can. I'm getting better every day, and put in the comment section. Let me know that my apologies accepted. You forgive me, and we can move forward. But part 10, woo! I'm telling you, part 10, we gonna start cranking. We gonna really start getting into some things, and I hope you learning, about the process, the court proceedings and things in the federal system. And I hope you just learning something from my journey that in hopes if you are in the streets and you're doing things that you shouldn't be doing, I hope that, so far my journey and what I'm sharing with you is impactful enough to help you to make a better decision with your life. So with that being said, we're going to close it out for today because I got to, get ready for work. And please hit the like button, also share. And once again, family, like I always ask, if you're not subscribed to the channel and you're watching this, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. It ain't gonna cost you nothing. Just go ahead and subscribe to the channel and, understand that it helps the platform. And I'm going to leave you as I always do. Remember that your potential for greatness is unlimited.